Welcome to the Better Baseball MLB DFS Playbook live show here for Monday's 7-game main slate. James, kicking off the week, 7 games here, some pretty interesting matchups on the board, some surprisingly low game totals. Should make for quite a fun slate to build some lineups for, my friend.
Yeah, definitely an interesting slate overall. Happy Monday, first and foremost, John. We have some just interesting things going on. Pitching is strong up top. It falls off a cliff after that. We do have some low totals, but we also have some pretty high ones at that. We don't have a lot of weather that we have to deal with,
Right.
only in your neck of the woods, potentially. So there's a lot of moving parts. I like these size slates. Monday always provides us with this type of like 7-gamer or so. So looking forward to getting into it and winning everyone some money per usual.
Yeah, listen, we've definitely had a good run here. That extended there over the weekend as well. I saw some of the screenshots there in our Discord. So let's look to keep that run going here. James, like you mentioned here, Vegas totals, some interesting matchups. Why don't we jump into it and tell the people what we're looking for, what we found kind of interesting, in any line movements that may have occurred since this morning.
Yeah, sure. So Boston did open as a pretty big favorite, minus 235. In some places, particularly DraftKings Sportsbook, that's actually been bet down to 215. FanDuel, it's pretty much remained steady, but on DraftKings, a little interesting to see the line move slightly in the Rockies' favor there. Logan Webb opened and the Giants opened minus 112 over the St. Louis Cardinals. He has now ballooned up a little bit, minus 135 over on DraftKings Sportsbook. Dane Dunning and the Texas Rangers have pretty much remained consistent at minus 155 throughout the day over the Los Angeles Angels. And then the biggest favorite on the board, the Tampa Bay Rays opened minus 247. That is now ballooned up to 260 on FanDuel 280. And something you and I talked about last night when we were talking about Miami-Seattle. Bryce Miller, who has not pitched well lately, faces Jesus Luzardo, and the Marlins, who has pitched well lately, and open minus 135, now down to minus 125 on DraftKings, minus 120 over on FanDuel. So, kind of your sentiment too. You were a little surprised if anyone saw your face on last night's stream when I told you the odds there. So it is kind of like trending in the direction you thought it would be originally, and I tend to agree. That's for moneyline. Any over-unders, you mentioned that there's some low game totals. That Miami-Seattle game has stayed firm at 7.5 throughout the day.
That was the reaction I had. I was very surprised to see 7.5 because we haven't really seen anything that low this season. So
there are some big juicy totals though. LA and Texas opened at 9.5, now up to 10 pretty much across the industry. 10 implied was the opening for Colorado Boston, now 9.5. So that game has actually dipped half a run, and I expect that to mainly be because people don't think Colorado can score, not because of anything Boston related. 8.5 implied runs in Cincinnati and Kansas City, but 10 implied runs in Philly, Arizona. And I think the interesting part is every sportsbook currently has the odds favored on the over. So just something to keep in mind. 10 implied runs, Philly, Arizona. Every sportsbook suggesting that total goes over. So
that was a pretty interesting matchup that we talked about as well. And we'll talk about it as we get into the pitching here in a moment as well. I'm just going to take a look at an updated weather because last I saw, there really still wasn't going to be a lot of rain in the New England area quite yet, but I'm going to go take a peek at what we got here. Yeah, like I said yesterday, there really isn't much expected to come out until later on. So should be good here for this game because that includes one of our favorite pitchers on the board, and we'll just pop into it now. Top pitching on the slate, Eflin, Webb, Miller all over 10K. Luzardo, Paxton up over 9K. When we did the show this morning, we were both fine going Eflin at 11K. We felt it was a little bit expensive, but we kind of just, when we made that lineup, we just plugged in Luzardo, Paxton. We were just in love with those spots for both of those pitchers here. Nothing's changed for us on the Paxton front. Has anything changed for you on the Luzardo front at all?
Nope.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like I don't have much to add there because I think they're probably the best two spend ups. At least like it's hard today, I think, to really want to get up to Eflin only because it's really hard to pair him with somebody else, right? Like
Mm.
we're gonna get to a few names that we're gonna throw out there, and it's not comfortable. Like after James Paxton, the rest of the position is not comfortable. Ownership ownership kind of takes that into account too when we start talking about pitcher.
Yeah.
Like everyone's playing Paxton Luzardo. We're not alone. It's just like hard to like you plug Eflin Paxton in your lineup. Let's say that's $3,700 a play, and it's not that like Luzardo Paxton, but like almost $3,900 a play. Like we almost have $200 extra to play with per position. It's a lot easier to fit guys into. Um, I like it's just hard pressed to get to Eflin when I think Luzardo and Paxton might even have as much upside
Right.
as Eflin too.
Yeah, listen, Eflin showing some decent strikeout potential lately. He had that random 0 strikeout game
Yep.
against Toronto. His strikeout prop of the night though is only like 5.5, 6 from what I've seen kind of floating around, depending on where you're looking at it, which feels low going up against an Oakland team for a guy that's given you 8 and 9 strikeouts at times this year. Bryce Miller's strikeout props just at 4.5. That's because Miami over the last 2 weeks has the lowest strikeout rate in baseball against right-handed pitching, just 16% there. And then kind of wedged in the middle, you have Logan Webb going up against St. Louis. Now, there was a point last week we were talking about St. Louis's struggles against righties. They've kind of turned that around since the weekend. Again, when you look at small sample sizes, those can flip pretty easily as the sample sizes become greater. So now you look at the last 2 week sample size for St. Louis against right-handed pitching, and it actually looks a lot better. So they're kind of still floating in the middle of the pack, but they were near the bottom. They had like a sub 1 ISO against righties there for a moment. Now they're kind of angling their way back towards the middle of the pack and being an offense that we expect to be good. So that's why we kind of sit ourselves in that Luzardo Paxton, and we talk about it a lot. It's okay to run the chalk and just find ways to be different elsewhere because there are definitely spots tonight where we're good attacking pitching. So plug Luzardo and Paxton in, or find a way to get to Eflin and be a little bit different here, because I don't find myself playing much Webb or much Miller here tonight. And I'll just look to be different when it comes to hitting. There are a couple of values that we want to talk about. So James, why don't you kind of go into it a little bit here?
Yeah, so they're actually the two highest projected owned values of the day. On the podcast, I suggested Luke Weaver. You suggested Dane Dunning. You also suggested one guy that we can just end on, and we'll finish off the position with him. But Luke Weaver actually getting like 16% rostership, which is actually a little higher than I expected. But there are like a few things that are in Luke Weaver's favor. One, this game is not being played in Great American. I think that is like first and foremost. We know how bad he's been in Great American and how bad people are just in general in Great American. It's just a place
over 7 on the year in his own ballpark.
Yeah, it's really tough to pitch in. And you take him out of Cincinnati and you put him in Kansas City, and Kansas City isn't an easy place to pitch in, but it's not Great American. Kansas City's offense against right-handed pitching just hasn't been good this year. 24.7% K rate. That's the 5th highest mark in baseball. They're 28th in OPS. They're 29th in WOBA. Like, they're not great, right? Like, that's just what they are. And that's putting it lightly. Like, they're subpar when it comes to right-handed pitching. Weaver on the road has a 23% strikeout rate, higher than it is at home, and he has an xFIP 3.5.
Yep.
Way better than his ERA suggests. Even just looking at season stats, like not even factoring in home and away splits, his xFIP, Sierra, all 2 runs better than his lower, I should say, than his ERA on the year. Like, there's just a lot of stuff that are suggesting Weaver is just kind of getting unlucky in large part due to pitching in Great American. So I think Luke Weaver makes sense as a value play. Now, honestly, I don't think you have to go in these directions if you're not comfortable doing it. You just said it. Like, you can go Luzardo, Paxton, eat that chalk, and then just be different elsewhere,
Right.
right? But Luke Weaver makes for a good pairing with like Eflin if you wanted to, because that also is like similar. That's actually, yeah, that's like similar cash to using Luzardo Paxton, right? That's
Yeah.
like essentially $100 off. So I think Eflin's pairing with Weaver could make sense. But you had a little more. You like Dane Dunning at 6,100. Talk to us about Dunning here.
Yeah, for me with Dunning here, it's just more so one, I think that there's good win equity here. Texas is just hammering everybody, right?
Yes.
So Dunning goes out there. He's been pretty good at limiting the damage. Now he's not going to go out there and be all that flashy with strikeouts, but he's had some games, where he gives you 4 or 5 mixed in there. He's been a ground ball machine, which kind of limits some of the damage. Now he did give up 3 home runs against St. Louis. Certainly a rare outing for him there. But just you're getting at $6,100. I mean, that is on a slate like this for a guy where you take into account at $6,100, you don't need a lot from him to really hit value. With Texas being a favorite here tonight, it just gives him that chance to get you 17 fantasy points, right? He goes out there, he goes 6 innings, maybe he gives up a run or 2, gives you 3 or 4 strikeouts and gets the win. And you kind of have even better Atlanta and St. Louis or Seattle, kind of the exact start against Seattle. 6 innings, 2 earned runs, got 5 Ks, got the win, 19 fantasy points. Maybe you take a strikeout away from there and he gives you 17 fantasy points. That's a winner at $6,100. So that's kind of where I was looking at him, because he hasn't given up any home runs until the 3 home run barrage against St. Louis there. In the Angels offense, Ohtani is good, obviously, and Trout's there, but the rest of that offense isn't all that spectacular. So, if he can limit the damage like he's been doing for the majority of this year, I think there's a good spot for him to get a win and give us that 16, 17 fantasy points here tonight.
Scary proposition, but I don't disagree. And again, we just kind of have to take stands, I think, in the value tier, which is why, if you guys listen to the MLB DFS podcast on the Better Sports Network here at 9 a.m. every single day, you heard John kind of give some love to Tommy Henry, the guy with 2 first names. He has 2 first names. He's also only going to be 2% rostered tonight.
Oh, yeah. No one's going to play him.
Do you still have any love for Tommy Henry? Has that worn off at all? We don't have a Phillies lineup. So we don't have anything official in that regard, but what is if you're playing a 10 max, how many lineups
I would
are you
probably have
Henry in?
2 Henry and a 10 max. I think that's probably where I would go with it. Again, for me, it's just strikeout rate. Philly against left-handed pitching over the last 2 weeks, a 31% strikeout rate. That's the 3rd highest in baseball. Just on the season, Philly against left-handed pitching, a 25.8% strikeout rate. That's the 7th highest in baseball. We just actually saw Tommy Henry face Philly in Philly, 5 2/3, 2 earned, 5 strikeouts, got you 19 fantasy points. The guy had 7 strikeouts against Colorado. He's been a better strikeout pitcher during the minors. Now, he's not a guy that had a 14 K per 9 in the minors, but a strikeout per inning, a little bit higher in that range. At the major league level, he doesn't strike anybody out, right? It's like a 5 K per 9. But, we liked him against Colorado, a team that is very bad against lefties. 7 Ks in that game, shutout innings. Washington's a tough matchup for a lot of people, so kind of ignore that one. But he's been largely serviceable. If he was to turn some of these no decisions or losses into wins, we're looking at a couple of games where those 10 fantasy points are 15 fantasy points. There's some potential for him at $6,200 to give you that upside. So listen, I understand it's gross. We don't generally like to play Tommy Henry here, but I'm just looking at a projected lineup. We don't, again, have the confirmed lineup yet for Philly, but they have 5 lefties in that lineup, really. And they hit for power. That's their one thing against lefties, but they're kind of a middling team everywhere else with a high strikeout rate. So, Schwarber strikes out a ton. he also just hits for a lot of power against lefties. So like,
Right.
there's definitely a lot of swing and miss here. They are getting Alec Boehm back, which will help them a little bit. But the bottom of their lineup projected right now has 3 lefties: Stott, Clemens, Marsh, and that wraps around the Schwarber, Turner, Harper. There's going to be a run in this game where he faces 5 lefties and 6 at bats, right? But
Right.
that could bode well for Tommy Henry here. So again, it's a pure dart throw. We're 7-game slate. We're trying to be different somewhere. He's 2% rostered, like you mentioned. And if you want to talk about, upside, he's got more K potential in this matchup than Dunning does in his. And who's
For
to say
sure.
they don't really end up with like a similar stat line? 5 2/3, 6 innings, 2 or 3 runs allowed. And if Dane Dunning only has 2 strikeouts, but Tommy Henry has 5, then you're in a better situation going with Tommy Henry there. So that's kind of where I'm at. Again, it's not spectacular, but I think it's doable tonight if you're just looking to get a little different on 7 games.
I would say a lot of different, but I agree. Philly with a 5.5 implied team total. That's the 4th highest mark on the slate. They're also like just looking at things right up there with Boston, Tampa, and Texas in terms of who's going the highest owned.
Mm-hmm.
So your immediate leverage, like
Yeah, I'm not saying again. Now, this isn't like your core play should be Tommy Henry for
no,
sure not. But if you're in a 3 max, like I'm gonna play tonight, or I'll play the 420 max, like I'll have a couple of shares of Henry. I'll probably use one Henry in the 3 max, and if I'm playing the 4 max, depending on how many lineups I build. But like I said, if I build 10, maybe I have 2 Tommy Henry just to
right?
see where he goes there. 2 Dane Dunning, and then the rest are gonna be Luzardo, Paxton, Eflin mixers, right? But I do think that there's some interesting potential for Tommy Henry here.
I agree. I agree. I think that the depiction you put there was fine. 3 max, you're not playing more than one of them.
So
If you're playing the 20 max, 20% max, probably 20% at most.
at most, yeah, it's
At
honestly, if I
most.
made 20 lineups, maybe it would be 3. Maybe it'd be 3
Right.
lineups, right? Like it wouldn't
Right.
be anything too spectacular there. Maybe also potentially worth noting. Again, we like to look for sample sizes here. Tommy Henry in his own ballpark this year, 2.49 ERA. Yeah.
Hmm.
So like he likes at home, not likes to sleep in his own bed. Doesn't like to go on the road. 4 road starts. It's got a 6.75 ERA. 5 home
Right.
starts, 2.49. So again, just more reasons kind of throw out there and to figure out a way to be a little bit different there. So to recap, we like Eflin, Luzardo, and Paxton are our top 2, but they're also gathering the most rostership. James likes Luke Weaver tonight, and again, some decent numbers for Weaver here on the road for him as well this year with some strikeout potential. And then we're doing dart throw value plays. Dunning and Henry both in the 6K range. Dunning has more ownership. Does he have more or less than Weaver?
Weaver is slightly ahead of
Okay,
Dunning, but they're the top 2 owned value
sure.
plays of the day.
So more in on Dunning here, and I think Henry's is just a straight pivot play there for tournaments tonight. So let's go on over to the catcher spot here, James. Talk to me about your favorite catcher tonight.
So I know I just touted Luke Weaver, but I'm also not at all afraid to play Kansas City because Luke Weaver also has struggled at times on the road, and maybe it's been slightly unlucky
Yeah.
situations. But
Skewed
Salvi
more so
Perez,
about that start in that start that he had in San Diego. A lot of his poor numbers.
right,
So
right. But Salvi, to your point, consistently throughout these streams are that he's only hit righties
only
this
hitting
year, and
right.
that's kind of just remained true. 264 ISO, 371 WOBA. So like those are scary numbers to face. Both Texas catchers in the lineup tonight. Jonah Heim hitting 6th, Mitch Garver hitting 7th. Heim's numbers against lefties this year are insane. Garver's on a much smaller sample but like you can't even judge him on this year's
Right.
stats because it's an 8 at bat sample. But Jonah Heim through 48 plate appearances, 431 WOBA, 200 ISO against left-handed pitching. And we know the struggles. The Tyler Anderson struggles are well documented by now against right-handed
Mhm.
batters. So um, against lefties too, 331 WOBA allowed. But I would say the most likely scenario is like just gravitating towards one or both Texas catchers,
Mhm.
like just
Yeah.
circulating through your lineups. But dude, let's not sleep on Patrick Bailey tonight. For the Giants, they just released their lineup. He's hitting eighth, and another guy with like kind of a small sample size. But I think the Giants are going to go largely overlooked, and maybe a preview of something to come in Grande's Gems tonight. But Patrick Bailey in a pretty small sample this year, 273 ISO, 512 WOBA, or 333 ISO, 418 WOBA against left-handed pitching. Again, very small sample, but he's not missing bats. And when you look at Matthew Liberatore, who once was a top prospect, and I do think there's like a lot of good stuff in there somewhere,
Mhm.
it just hasn't been the case thus far in his major league career. And 174 plate appearance sample, okay, against right-handed batters from last year and this year. 236 ISO, 407 WOBA allowed. 56% hard hit rate.
Yeah.
Like, I think Patrick Bailey is a very, very good value
Yeah,
play.
hitting eighth tonight for them, but
Yep.
still good potential spot from there. The only one that I would, a couple guys that I would mention rather, Stevenson's hitting sixth for Cincinnati against Greinke. I think we're pretty religiously okay stacking against Greinke there. Gabriel Moreno is going to at least get, or potentially at least get a matchup against Strom, but Dylan Covey's been an absolute gas can. So for the majority of his career, I'm perfectly fine going in that direction with him there. And then Dice is Dice, however we're going to go ahead and pronounce his name there, hitting fifth, $2,700. Good middle of the order bat there, and just hitting really well. Hits righties really well. I know Dunning
Yep.
doesn't have a lot of power. It doesn't give up a lot of home runs, but still, perfectly potential for a spot there as well.
Yeah. Dude, hitting fifth. Like that's a different lineup position that I probably weren't expecting, but he continues to hit righties. And speaking of hitting righties, I'll just throw out one. And I think I'm surprised you didn't go here and go to your boy Connor Wong, who has absolutely mashed against righties this year. 275 ISO, 353 WOBA against right-handed pitching this year. Connor Siebold
Mm-hmm.
has been bad against both splits, so like that's why Boston is going to be probably the most popular
Yeah.
stack of the night. Been worse against righties. 212 ISO allowed, 369 WOBA, 31% fly ball rate is kind of scary when you're talking about Fenway. 45% hard hit rate is definitely scary when you're talking about Fenway. So I don't know, Connor Wong hitting eighth, just mashing righties against a guy struggling against righties.
Yeah.
Like, kind of fits the build here. Maybe a way like to help you afford the expensive
Yeah.
Devers and the expensive
And
Yoshida,
he's hitting really well at
and
home. Obviously, the monster helps him a ton. 5 of his
right,
6 homers are at home. 271, 895, 557 splits in his own
right,
ballpark this year. So I like that. I like Connor Wong. I think it all depends on like how much Boston do you want, right? If you're
yeah,
building out a Red Sox stack, are you going to sacrifice one of the, because you don't want to have like 5 Red Sox? I mean, you could, but like
good,
generally,
yeah.
you want to maybe get a little different exposure. So if you're going Yoshida and Devers and
So
Verdugo,
Yoshida not. I wish Yoshida wasn't
not playing
not in
tonight,
the lineup.
not playing. Well, there you go.
No, not playing in the lineup.
Well,
No, not in
even
the
better
lineup.
then. Saves you a spot then maybe for a Connor Wong tonight. Question in chat, Nick here. Just quick, we'll touch on the full outfield in a moment. But the Royals DFA'd Jackie Bradley Jr. They called up Darian Blanco here tonight. He's hitting ninth. I don't see. Is he in there he is hitting ninth.
Yeah, he's so fast.
2K.
So fast.
Yes, big speed guy. Yeah, I think he's in play. If you want to go there against Weaver, he's a mid-price guy, 2K. So we're in. If you need them out, if you need the value here, we're not gonna certainly turn it around. We like the wraparound potential that he brings to the table. At AAA this year, he's hitting 347 with an 895 OPS. He had, brace yourselves, he had
Yep.
47 stolen bases in 49 games this year. So, classic Royal, right? Those run-on Royals when they went to the World Series. Jared Dyson just coming in, stealing second, third. Like those that
doing the young jock on second base
time. Every single time he come on, just steal bags. So the only guy I would ever roster knowing he wasn't playing because I knew that he would come in at some point and swipe a bag or two. So Blanco's good. That speed is absurd. And it's not like Luke Weaver's, shutting guys down here. So there's a good spot potentially for him there tonight. We'll touch on the rest of the outfield here in a few moments. Let's swing it back over to first base, though, James. Talk about our favorite first baseman on the slate. Everybody's tuning in. If you have any questions, type them in chat, right? Like, subscribe to the live stream. If you're not already done so here, get involved with us. Ask your questions. We're here to help you guys make your winning lineups here. We'll go over some more of our favorite plays at the end of the show. We'll build the lineup. It will give you some of our favorite props here tonight as well. So don't be shy. Get in chat. Ask us some cues. James and I are more than happy to help you out here tonight. First base, James. Talk to me about your favorite first baseman tonight.
Can't believe you just glossed over how good that young jock, that little young jock dance I did was. But I guess young jock is probably a little. You're probably a little too old.
I know who young jock anyway. Is, but
favorite first baseman, you could definitely obviously get to Ohtani if you want. He's been really good outside of the one game that we played him the other night against the Cubs.
3 nights out, like
homer. Yep.
I'm sitting here top 25, and all I need is Ohtani to do anything. He gets 3 fantasy points.
Yeah, that was the one for 4 night when then he homers back-to-back nights and then 3 for 5 the next
night.
Nightmare. So you could definitely get there. You could definitely get to Yandy Diaz. He has slowed down like a little bit, especially in the power department. Hasn't homered in like 15 games. But like has been flashing a lot of power this year, so you could definitely get to Yandy. Righties don't hit James Kaprielian as well as lefties do, so definitely keep that in mind. I think Spencer Steer is perfectly in play now. Look, I'll say this: I love the Reds lefties here. I'm a little indifferent about the righties because we've seen this song and dance with Greinke every single time out. Like he is a tough guy to just stack against. 5 earned runs last time out was like a shock almost because he's typically between like 0, 1, 2 earned runs. So I'm okay getting to Steer. Christian Walker feels really good at 41, even though it could be Dylan Covey for a majority of this game. I think first base is kind of.
I'll tell you where I'm going.
$3,500.
Is he 35? He is $3,500. He is. I'm going Luke Raley. Luke Raley is an absolute power machine. On the season, 929 OPS, 583 slug. He's got a 690 slug over his last 10 games, 1,000 OPS there. He just hits. I mean, the dude's got quick math here: 23 extra base hits on the year of his 37 hits. 23 of his 37 hits are extra base hits. And you just mentioned James Kaprielian stats. Lefties off Kaprielian this year hitting 300, but he's 600 slug, 1,000 OPS. 6 of his 7 home runs allowed have come to left-handed hitters. He's given up 6 doubles to left-handed hitters here. Like, he is just getting hammered by lefties. And all Luke Raley does is mash extra base hits. So he's like my favorite value play on the slate. He's one of my favorite plays overall. At $3,500, I'm plugging in Luke Raley into my lineups. I love the Rays as a stack. Love Luke Raley in general. So that's it for me. If you're not spending up at first base, like play Luke Raley or just play Luke Raley in the outfield because fortunately for us, he is multi-position eligible here. But like if Raley doesn't come through tonight with a double or a home run or multiple doubles, like I feel like, test Kaprielian after the game for drugs.
Right. For drugs.
I don't know.
Not even PEDs. Not even PEDs, just drugs.
Yeah. I get that it's in Oakland. It's a pitcher's park. But still, Raley just absolute masher.
I mean, I love Luke Raley, 3,500. I also love that you could play in multi-positions. I would say there are 2 other guys I would consider playing. Tristan Casas, 2,800, has shown signs of life. 3 multi-hit games over his last 6. We're starting to see the power come around. 4 extra base hits over his last 10 games. Really good spot against Connor Siebold in Fenway. And then how about Wilmer Flores hitting third tonight for the San Francisco Giants? Giants are going very right-handed heavy, which I think is expected because Liberatore has struggled mightily um, against left-handed pitching. How about Wilmer back to his prime form against left-handed pitching, John? 221 ISO, 334
Yeah.
WOBA for Wilmer Flores. And I already touched on Liberatore against righties and left or against righties this year. 236 ISO allowed, 407 WOBA allowed. It's a really good spot for the Giants. I think they're going vastly overlooked. They're, again, I've already kind of given away some secrets to Grande Gems, but 2,700 for Wilmer Flores feels really good because you could, again, if you really want to play Luke Raley, you could just pivot to him in the outfield.
Right.
Um, Hitting third tonight, 2,700. That's how Luke Raley and Wilmer Flores, exactly how you pay up at pitcher
Yep.
tonight, and get comfortable.
Yeah, 100%. Listen, we talked about it earlier on the year when they had such bad numbers against lefties. It was puzzling because they had a lot of guys that in their lineup on name value, because we've been doing this show now for 10
Yeah.
years almost, right? Like you see a name like, oh, matches lefties, has to. And then we look at the numbers like, wait a minute. Like JD Martinez or JD Davis isn't hitting lefties and Wilmer Flores isn't hitting lefties. Like didn't compute. Now some of these guys are starting to turn it around. Flores is definitely one of them. So I do like that call there as well for some value. Him and Casas down there stick out a little bit for me. Moving on over to second base. Do you have anybody else you want to discuss?
Alec Boehm getting a bunch of ownership, 3,400, but we can also talk about him at third.
Sure. Second base then here, man. Again, we're looking at Ketel Marte at 5K against a lefty for a little bit, but just hitting the ball in general lately pretty well. Estrada at $5,200. Simeon's up top here against Anderson at 58. All pretty expensive options for you. Do you find yourself looking to go up at second, or is there more of a target for you down below?
Yeah, be okay with honestly getting to any of these guys. I know Simeon's power comes off of righties, but 354 WOBA, low strikeout rate, high walk rate against left-handed pitching this year. So I'd be okay getting to Simeon. I can say the same thing against Estrada. Like Estrada was definitely better against righties earlier in the year. Things seem to be balancing a little bit. 365 WOBA against left-handed pitching. I already talked about Liberatore struggles against righties, and Estrada coming off the double dong on Sunday. He's just looked really good. We know this is a guy. This is one of the few guys in the slate that like homers and steals bags in the same game.
Yeah.
Like that, he has as much upside as really anyone else does. Love Marte. Don't love what he's done lately, but we're starting to see a little more power, a little more speed than we were earlier in the year. So I like all three guys over 5K. And then it just feels like another situation where I'm just kind of dropping down. Like Casey Schmidt has been really, really good against lefties. He's hitting 7th tonight. And I know he slowed down drastically since he hit. And obviously there's a trend. I'm playing a lot of Giants tonight. But 273 ISO, 512 WOBA for Casey Schmidt this year against lefties. 33 plate appearance sample. Sure. Not a big sample. But in that sample, he's raked lefties against a guy who's struggling against right-handed bats.
Yeah.
So if I'm not spending up on those top three guys, I'm pretty much just diving down into this value tier to Casey Schmidt, who you could play at second or you could play at shortstop.
Yeah, I don't mind that call. Again, you're just kind of looking for some value there because the middle tier, it's really not all that appealing. I mean, Indy at 46. I like that the price is at least coming down a little bit on him. Hitting third, he has hit righties a little bit better than lefties this year. So, like, I'm fine going in that direction if you wanted to, but we're not going to go Donovan against Webb or Gorman against Webb here. Raz, I mean, he's hitting 400. If you want a guaranteed like 4 fantasy points, like you can play Luis Urias, but I'm largely with you here. Give me some value or just bite the bullet, spend up for somebody like a Simeon Estrada or a Ketel Marte here this evening. Over at third base is where we come into the Ellie show. He's shortstop and third base eligible. So question is, do you want to plug him here, James? Or do you want to spend up for a Devers tonight or a Josh Jung at $4,600 against Anderson?
That's the latter. I would prefer Elliott shortstop. I think third is made up of Rafael Devers and Josh Jung and JD Davis, and I'm really just getting my exposures there. And you can go down, like, we know Arizona has some good value in their lineup that hit lefties well if you want to bank on them hitting Strom early. And Alec Boehm hits lefties really well. He's back. Isaac Paredes has a monster power if you want to go there, but he's historically been better against lefties. It is Devers if I'm spending all the way up against Connor Siebold, who Devers has come alive in that Yankee series. He loves facing the Yankees. It seems like if Rafael Devers is struggling, he's just circling the Yankees on the calendar,
Mhm.
like, yes, this is where I'm going to get going again. And get going, he did, homering in 2 of 3. But Josh Young can just do no wrong against lefties. Like, he continues to just mash lefties. 333 ISO this year, leads the team. 447 WOBA this year, technically leads the team because Mitch Garver just hasn't had enough plate appearances. So yeah, I think those two guys and JD Davis. Oh, by the way, hitting 333 with a 900 OPS his last 10 games. Um, a guy who's historically been better
Yep.
against lefties has been better against righties this year. But like, he didn't just forget to hit against lefties, right? Like, that just still has a 176 ISO 357 WOBA against them.
Yep.
So it's really those three guys for me. If you want to play Ellie here, great, because then you can play McLean over at shortstop if you wanted to go like full red stack. Um, but I feel like you're kind of missing out on one of these guys and pairing them with Ellie De La Cruz, right?
Yeah.
Because you could, why not just do both?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the couple of value guys we'll look at for Arizona, whether it be Longoria or Rivera,
Yep. Yep.
going to both be in play there as well. Again, but like you
Sure.
said, you're playing them, you're probably only playing them in a stack because if you're going to
Yeah.
one off the position, you're going to talk about either Ellie, Jung, or Devers here. So it's
Yep.
kind of what I'm feeling at third base. Over on shortstop, then. So you obviously mentioned you would prefer to play Ellie over at short tonight, but if say you're going in a different direction, does Seager against a lefty scare you off at all at $5,900?
No, he's been hitting lefties as well. He's been hitting righties. And this, it's tough because if you're playing Rays, like, obviously you want to get Wander in your lineup. So I can understand why you'd play Ellie at third. I just kind of prefer Devers and Jung to Wander, which I know sounds crazy,
Yeah.
but that's kind of where I'm sitting with Boston and Texas tonight. So, like, Seager and Wander, I think, are both elite as it gets spend ups, but all roads lead to Ellie De La Cruz at
All right.
4,300.
Any other values then down at shortstop for you? I mean, we have Ezekiel Duran has multi-position eligibility, $3,200 down here. Anybody else that may pique your interest?
Dude, Ezekiel Duran has some monster numbers against
Yes,
left-handed pitching
yes, he
this year.
does. Yes, he
20
does.
208 ISO, 425 WOBA, not striking out. And again, Tyler Anderson, just to reiterate how bad he's been against right-handed hitters this year. 214 ISO, 375 WOBA, almost a 40% fly ball rate for a guy who's typically been a ground ball pitcher. 35% hard hit rate, not great. Like, hard not to like Ezekiel Duran. Fortunately, we could play him in the outfield, but like, if you're looking for value at shortstop, this is just your funnel. Like, you're just going right to Duran. Now, Casey Schmidt, I mentioned at second, you could do that the same thing. He has very good numbers against lefties, but Duran has the bigger sample,
Yeah.
more, and has been equally as good, if not better. And he also has outfield eligibility where you could play three of them as opposed to like one second baseman and one shortstop. So I love Duran 3,200.
Yeah, I'm fully in agreement with you there as well. I think another one that could be interesting, and I guess it all depends on who's in or out of the lineup here. But Perdomo has hit the ball really well against lefties this year, and just hit the ball well in general. Righties 285, lefties 333 this season. And he could get either Dylan Covey or by the time by the time he comes around, or maybe Matt Strom is still on the bump there. But I do like Geraldo Perdomo in lineups should he be starting tonight for Arizona.
So, as you started talking about that, the
Okay.
Arizona lineup came out 15 seconds ago.
And
He is batting eighth.
okay.
There is no Gabriel Moreno tonight.
Ooh, okay.
Emmanuel Rivera is hitting second. Corbin Carroll third. Ketel Marte leading off. I skipped that. Evan Longoria, Christian Walker fourth, Evan Longoria fifth, Pavin Smith hitting sixth. The reason there is no Gabriel Moreno tonight, John, Carson Kelly making his return, hitting seventh. We know Carson Kelly as someone who hits lefties historically well, so he is making his season debut. Hit 345 at AAA or on his rehab assignment before the call up, so that is very interesting to see. Carson Kelly $2,700 hitting. What did I say? Seventh, Perdomo eighth, McCarthy ninth.
Not bad. Season debut, as you mentioned here, for him. Really good minor league stint, like 345, 3 doubles, 4 RBI, and 29 at bats. I'm just gonna try to pull up what he was last year. Did he hit lefty as well last year?
Yeah, well, he's historically been good against lefties.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Kind of down year just in general, but yeah, last year was just kind of a wash season for him. But the year before that, big time against lefties. 313, 607 slug, 1,000 OPS for the year against lefties. So Carson Kelly, that's interesting. Especially, like I said, Strong will be there for a little bit. Dylan Covey expected, but Dylan Covey's been very bad for a while here. So, all right, let's go on then over to the outfield position. Again, a lot of top-end talent over here. I still like Carroll, even if the lefty is starting. Again, eventually the righty Covey will be in there. Adolis is at 55. I like a Rosarena. Obviously, you can go Ohtani or Trout if you want there as well. And how are you feeling just about in general, the 5K and above tier?
It's pretty strong. Corbin Carroll hits righties, hits lefties. Doesn't matter who's on the mound. Adolis has been pretty good against lefties as the sample has gotten larger. I think Adam Duvall and Verdugo are very interesting at 5K 49. I think the one interesting thing tonight, and the first question we had was from our good friend Mark here, and it was about Bryce Miller showing up. And looking at some numbers for Bryce Miller is really interesting because you have Jorge Soler sitting here at $5,100. And we know Jorge Soler has as much power as maybe anyone else in professional baseball. He has 19 home runs on the year. He hit 2 yesterday. Back-to-back 3-hit games for Jorge Soler as well. And he even stole a base on Saturday, his first stolen base of the year. So I'm not expecting that. But Bryce Miller has obviously struggled the last few starts. He's not a guy who has given up a lot of home runs, but he gave up a bunch of home runs at AA before the call-up. And I think that's largely due to the fly ball rate that this guy has. 48% fly ball rate. Like everything that's hit off Bryce Miller is just in the air.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't play when it comes to Jorge Soler, because anything that Jorge Soler hits in the air is
goes out of the ballpark.
can leave the yard. Right. So like I'm not sitting here advocating for a Marlins stack at all. But you and I also looked last night. The Marlins are now their offense is definitely improving, and right-handed pitching is where you can exploit the Marlins, but like as a one-off,
a little bit. I was very surprised. Again, I do the PrizePicks article over at Fantasy Alarm. That's out on the Fantasy Alarm YouTube. It's out on the Fantasy Alarm site. So I'm kind of perusing through, trying to figure out where maybe there are some edges, and I come across a combined strikeout prop, which PrizePicks does. Luzardo Miller at 11.5. I'm like, 11.5? I'm like, Luzardo's got 8-9 strikeout potential in this matchup. Like, what does Miller have? And then I go look at it. It was at 4.5. I'm like, 4.5? Like, that feels awfully low going up against Miami. And then I go look it up. In the last 2 weeks, Miami has a 16% strikeout rate. So they're just putting a whole bunch of balls in play right now against right-handed pitching. And then you mentioned they have a lot of guys that hit for power. Now, Soler is one of them, but like, Brian De La Cruz is a guy that puts a lot of balls in play here. They have Iraz, who's hitting 390, whatever. They got Wendell back, and he started hitting the ball pretty well. They have Jesus Sanchez, who hits for power, right? Like, so this team just started clicking over the last couple of weeks. They're still not like a good team, but, like the Nationals here, if they're not striking out, then they just wear teams down, wear pitching down,
Right. So they're, over the last 2 weeks, as you mentioned, 12th in OPS, 12th in ISO against right-handed pitching. So still better than top half of the league. I'd be a little scared if I'm using Bryce Miller tonight
Where does he rank for rostership tonight?
He's low. He's under 10% rostered tonight.
So nobody's really in on him.
Yeah, not a lot of people are using him, and I think he's been bad, so I can understand. 8% around, which is around Liberatore and Caprillion, John. Those are the names that he is paired with in terms of rostership.
More people playing Caprillion than Miller. That's
more people are playing. I mean, it's just, I think that's a product of like just taking a shot at some guys because
usually you want to take a shot at some guys against the best team in baseball against.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I think if I'm playing anyone on Miami, it's Soler given the fly ball rate that Bryce Miller is allowing this year.
Okay. If we're looking at if anybody fades in this area, I'm just, again, I talked Henry up a little bit. I don't think I spend $6K for Harper. If I'm spending $6K, I'd find a way to Ohtani or Trout here tonight. And then I'd rather just spend 56 on Corbin Carroll or 54 on Randy Arozarena here tonight, and kind of go in that direction.
My fade's probably Julio Rodriguez, only because I really like Jesus Luzardo tonight. And Seattle's bottom 10 in every statistical category against left-handed pitching this year.
Yeah. Some of their guys just have not really come through this year. Under 5K range, Adam Duvall's back, hitting fifth for the Red Sox, hitting at home. Seabold's numbers against righties, not all that spectacular here.
No, they're horrible. They're horrible.
So, if you're looking for a spot for Duvall to, get it going, certainly could be it. Again, he was hitting 400 when he got hurt. And look at that damage at home. 476, 1,500, 1,000 slug in 5 home games this year. He was 10 for 21. So, could be a night where he puts one out, especially with the wind blowing out a little bit because of the weather that's coming in. So I certainly don't mind that play. I know Josh Lowe has slowed it down power-wise, but still 280 average over the last 10. And as I mentioned before, those lefty numbers against Caprillion are insane. So the fact that we don't have to spend over 5K for him anymore is nice as well. So you get Lowe, you get Rayleigh, Arozarena. Wander's going to be on his left side here. I know that's not his strongest side, but again, still a spot where he's been hitting lefty. I do like the Rays a lot here tonight. Where else are you going in the mid-tier range at 4K?
Nick Castellanos 4,800 I think is really interesting, given how good he's been against left-handed pitching this year. They moved him into that 2-hole where they swapped him and Trey Turner, and Trey Turner's been hitting cleanup. So Castellanos against lefties this year, 181 ISO, 380 WOBA. Righties with a 200 ISO against Tommy Henry. Lefties have actually, a little scary, lefties have actually hit Tommy Henry pretty hard this year, John. Yeah. So, not a free pass, although there's obviously strikeout appeal for Tommy Henry against left-handed bats. They've hit him kind of hard. But I like Castellanos against.
Isn't playing tonight.
They don't play this guy.
Unbelievable.
They never play this guy. I would say Castellanos amongst the guys you mentioned. It's like Castellanos. I love the Josh Lowe call. Then I'm probably not getting to anyone until TJ Friedl. I think TJ Friedl is really interesting at 3,700. Given what lefties specifically have done against Greinke. Because we've talked about it a lot. Greinke's hard to stack against, but Friedl leading off $3,700 has big numbers against righties this year, 366 WOBA. He's a stolen base and a home run threat, and Greinke's allowed 237 ISO, 378 WOBA.
I like Friedl there a lot. I like the stolen base potential that he has, as you mentioned. And I just think the dynamic of the Reds lineup changes with Ellie there, right? It's just a guy that can literally put a ball anywhere on the field, right? He just mashes home runs, doubles, triples. He's a game changer in that lineup. You get guys on base in front of him, and they're just as likely to come in now than they've ever been in that Reds lineup there. So big fan of that. I like Jarren Duran leading off tonight at $3,500. He's another just absolute burner. Can turn singles into doubles pretty quickly. So in on that. Mentioned Luke Rayleigh at $3,500. Estory Ruiz is basically even money for a stolen base every night at this point at $3,400. So certainly can find your way there. But talk to me about Austin Slater tonight, man. Leading off, another guy that just hits lefties really well historically. 3,300 bucks. You like the Giants tonight. I got to assume you'll have their leadoff hitter in your lineup.
I sure will. And the historic numbers are correct. For his career, Austin Slater against left-handed pitching, 291 average, 854 OPS, 183 ISO, 368. But this isn't like a spring chicken. Like, he's been in Major League Baseball for a while. He's just one of those dudes that hit lefties extremely well. He was playing really well before the injury. He gets injured. He's been injured twice this year, actually. Has come back. He's looked as good as he did prior to the injury, like 375 average to his first 17 games this year. Look, the one worry with San Francisco always is they pinch hit guys, right? All the time. Like, these outfielders are so in and out that, like, Austin Slater could, if he doesn't go 2 for 3 in his first 3 at-bats, he's getting pinch hit in the 7th inning for probably Lamonte Wake. But Austin Slater could also go 2 for 3 with 2 doubles, 2 runs scored, and he's going to get the 4th at-bat. He's hit lefties extremely well this year. He's hit them extremely well his whole career. And again, Matthew Liberatore has not pitched well against righties. We're getting a leadoff hitter at 3,300, a guy who's hit lefties really well. 466 WOBA again this year, like right on par with everything he's done his whole career. So, I think Austin Slater is one of my favorite values of the day, if not my favorite value of the day. Stay tuned there. And it doesn't really get much better than a $3,300 leadoff hitter in his split.
I'm with you there. Leonis Taveras, $3,200, hitting 9th. And now, the month of June has been a rough start to him, to only hitting 200 on the month. So his numbers against lefties have started to dip a little bit here, but still, I mean, that lineup top to bottom for Texas is dynamite. He's hitting now in front of Simeon and Seager because he's hitting 9th in that lineup. So I think Leotis here is fine, $3,200. I'm certainly good going there. We got a couple questions here. We have our guy Diggs over on Twitch saying, "What's up? What's up, Diggs? Hope you had a good weekend. Hope you've had some profitable days here." And then Duran Mark says Duran fine to pair with Devers. I'm assuming you mean Jaron, not Ezekiel, but both would be good. Certainly can go Duran and Devers there. 2 lefties going up against Seabold there for sure. Talk to me, though. More value as you work our way down here. Tell me who you're keying in on here tonight.
Not much else that we haven't already mentioned. Like, Taylor Ward leading off is interesting because he's been so good. He's kind of reverting back to the guy we saw earlier in the year. And that's if you're not in on Dane Dunning. I can understand it. If you are interested in the fly ball rate of Bryce Miller, Jesus Sanchez hitting 5th. We know Teoscar Hernandez hits lefties for a lot of power. He's been really good lately. There's not a lot else, though.
Will Benson's hitting 7th tonight. Got lefty, got a little power in his bat going up against Greinke here, $2,600. I think you can take a peek on that one there. And then we mentioned Darian Blanco's at 2K. Again, just to reiterate for those just now tuning in, Royals designated Jackie Bradley Jr. called on Blanco. He has 47 stolen bases in 49 games at AAA this year. So if he finds his way to first tonight, he is almost certainly going to try to steal. It's his calling card to the major league is his speed. So you want a guy that could steal 2nd and 3rd, could get on twice and steal 2 bags. Blanco certainly a guy to watch here this evening. McCarthy's hitting 9th for Arizona. Stroud may be out of the game by the time his first at-bat pulls around. So I don't mind McCarthy. I know he's slowed down a little bit, but still 7 stolen bags over his last 10 games. I know he hasn't stolen a base in 4 straight, but if he finds his way on, I think you can certainly go and take a peek in that direction here tonight.
Dude, honestly, like, Arizona could be really, really just underappreciated tonight, just considering, like, I mean, you saw last night, if you guys watched the MLB DFS podcast this morning, you saw John's face light up like a Christmas tree when he saw Dylan Covey was the long reliever. And He's so bad, and nobody's playing Arizona tonight. And Matt Strahm, for what he was earlier in the year, right? Like, he was a starter, a traditional starter, at least semi-traditional. They didn't really extend him that much. We see that they don't want to
Right.
extend him at all. In his last 7 outings, 8 outings, 9 outings, he hasn't gone more than 2 and a third. If Dylan Covey is spanning most of the innings or just Philly's bullpen in general, Arizona's just being underrepresented.
Right.
Think about this. There are 5 teams tonight, John, with a team total of 5 implied runs or more. 4 of them have like 10% projected, are the 4 highest projected teams of the slate. Boston, Tampa, Texas, Philly. Nobody's
Right.
playing Arizona, but they're the 5th team with 5 runs implied or more. Why isn't anyone playing Arizona? You know, we have Strahm, who's not going to be in there, and then Covey, who has a 10 ERA that hasn't been good except for his one revenge out inning
Right.
against the Dodgers, right? So I'm just throwing it out there. Like, to your point, McCarthy probably doesn't even face Strahm. And if he does, even if he gets on, like, he's going to probably
Right.
steal regardless. So I think Arizona's like very sneaky tonight. Just given, like, we know that they're implied a lot of runs. We know they're going to face pretty bad pitching throughout this game, especially if it's Covey spanning most of the innings. I don't know. I really like your McCarthy call, and you obviously touted Corbin Carroll pretty extensively at the top of this position. So just
Yep,
some
for
food for
sure.
thought
All
there.
right, let's get into the Grande's Gems calls of the night. Give me your home run call, top stack, value stack, and start of the night here today.
Home run call is going to be Josh Jung. If you guys saw my home run tweet, like I do daily over at my Twitter handle, which you can see right there, Josh Jung plus 360 over on DraftKings Sportsbook is my home run call. Top stack, Boston Red Sox. I think they're going to do damage against Connor Siebold. My contrarian stack is going to be the San Francisco Giants, and I'll slash, I guess,
Yeah.
Arizona because no one's getting to one of the most implied runs on the board here. But I love San Francisco tonight against Matthew Liberatore. I'm going to go with my top star, my top play of the night. I'll just stick with Josh Jung because I think he's going to hit a home run. That's my most comfortable position. And my value play of the night, leading off for San Francisco, is
All
going
right.
to be
For
Austin.
me, I'm going Luke Raley home run. I agree, Red Sox, but I also like the Rays as a top stack. Contrarian stack, going to go Reds, going to go with Arizona if you're looking to 2 teams to spend down on tonight. I think Devers was going to be my start of the night going up against Connor Siebold, though, and I'll go Luke Raley as my value play here as well. James, let's build a lineup here. I'm going to plug in our Luzardo Paxton call. I do want to actually throw Blanco in because he's just a free square at 2K.
Okay.
And then I want to use probably Rayleigh at first base here.
Slater in the outfield.
Rayleigh, Slater in the outfield. Catcher position. What do we want to do? Do we want to give a go at Carson Kelly here?
I would probably prefer
Okay.
Connor Wong, truthfully, just for the power upside and that stack. I think.
So we got 40
really
and 51. We wanted Elliott short.
Devers. We could get to Devers
probably now. Devers at third. 4,700 for second base and an outfield. What was our spend down second baseman? Schmidt, right?
Yeah, it was Schmidt or.
Well, if we do Schmidt, we have $6,100. We can play Corbin Carroll. Love it. Bingo.
Love it.
All right, so we got Luzardo, Paxton, Wong, Rayleigh, Schmidt, Devers, Ellie, Blanco, Slater, and Carroll here tonight. Again, you can certainly do a little bit more and move those lineups around if you want. James and I will be in our Discord. If you're not yet a member of the Fantasy Line family, now's the time to join. FantasyLine.com/all-pro. Promo code MLB50 saves you 50% off the first 6 months. It also comes with a 7-day free trial. You get access to all content that we put on site and our premium Discord channel there as well. James and I will be back